Hey guys, Julien here, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make cosmic techno. This is a sound that's very popular in techno right now. I've released a lot of tracks in this style, and today I'm going to be breaking down how I make tracks in this style and some different techniques I picked up on from a lot of the popular tracks in this style. So yeah, as usual, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI and presets. Everything from this video is available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. And yeah, let's dive in. So this is the loop from the intro. We're at 128 BPM, pretty standard tempo for this style. Usually, between like 126 and 130 or 132 or around there is like a pretty good tempo with this style. The first sound we have here is the lead, which sounds like this. So here are the notes for this one. You can see it's just basically doing this thing where it's playing a little doom doom with this D sharp here. And then in the 16th notes, we have these different notes kind of like bouncing down the scale here. So you can see what's happening is it's pretty much just going down like the standard F minor scale. Because if you look, D sharp minor scale. Because you can see we have D sharp, then the 9th, which is F, the minor 3rd, which is F sharp, G sharp, which is also in that scale, A sharp, which is the 5th, and then that B, which is just one note up from A sharp. So basically what's happening is it's just going. You can see, like, it just kind of walks down that scale with the higher notes. And yeah, this makes a really catchy melody because it's very, like, in some ways, I want to say it's predictable, but it's not necessarily, like, just because it's predictable. But it's kind of, like, very satisfying to your brain when you hear this, like, perfectly walking down the scale like this. And yeah, for the sound with this one, it's made with wavetables. So what this is you can see we have a square wave and then we have a saw wave. And the saw wave is actually an octave and 7 semitones up. It's at -5, but you can see what's happening is we have the square wave at -24. So then an octave up from that would be -12, and then we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There we go. So this just kind of gives you a little bit of differentiation between the two oscillators because you can hear that 5th just sitting over top of the square wave. And it's subtle, but it adds a very interesting sound to the overall sound. Then we just got that going through this low pass, and then you can see I've got this amp envelope on the filter frequency. So that's what's giving it that quick, plucky. And yeah, and then the last thing that we've got going on here, as you can see, we just have a bit of unison. This is on the noise setting. So you can hear that kind of just gives it. If I turn off the filter, you can hear it a bit more. It's giving it the unison sound like you hear in a lot of these style of tracks, but this noise setting just gives it a little bit of a different texture. And yeah, then from there, we have a bit of chorus spreading the sound out. I have a bit of overdrive. This is really good for making your sounds really like fat and just hard hitting. Here's without it. And then with it. You can hear it does get a little bit more crunchy, but you get this just like super fat sound coming from having this overdrive on here. So I definitely recommend doing that with your leads, as long as they're only playing one note at a time. Because you can see once you start using two notes, it starts to get a little bit jumbled. But when you just have one note playing at a time, this distortion on the lead works really well. And yeah, then from there we have a bit of echo. You can see this is on the ping pong setting, and then I've got it on dotted eighth notes. And I've got the stereo turned down a bit so it's not super wide. Because typically techno tracks, you need them to work in mono for the club. Then we have a bit of saturation and then just a bit of EQ to cut out a bit of low end and boost the highs a little. And then finally just a compressor, side chaining it a little to the kick. You can hear how that's working. It's not a whole lot, but it just makes it fit into the groove a bit more. And yeah, that's it for the lead. From there we have this little stab, which sounds like this. So you can hear that just hits like right there as like a little call and response with the lead. And you can hear this is a really subtle layer, but if I turn it off, it just feels like something's missing, you know, having this little just hitting there works really well. So the note for this one is just D sharp. Whenever I have a stab like this, I usually just have it play whatever the root note is of the key that we're in. And then for the sound with this one, it's made with analog. So what this is it's a square wave and a saw wave. You can see the square wave's an octave down, and I've got the saw wave detuned a little bit, and then we just have the amp envelope set like this, just kind of like a quick burn. And then I've just got some unison, and that's it for inside the synth. It's a really simple sound inside of the synth. The main thing here is just like how fat it gets when you have the square wave and the saw wave together. It's a really good combination if you want like a fat stab like this, because you can see if I change this to a saw wave, it's not quite as fat even as when you combine those both together. And yeah, then we just have a bit of overdrive, so here's without that. And with it, so same deal as the lead, it's not super noticeable, but it just adds that extra bit of like fatness and hard hitting sort of thing to the sound. You can hear it just sounds super like raw with this. Then after that we have this auto filter, and so this is actually a page taken out of the drum and bass playbook where we're using what's called a notch filter on this little stab here. So if I turn this off, that's what it sounds like, and then if I turn it on, here the texture is constantly shifting. So this is what the notch filter is doing. It's just cutting out like this certain area here, and then what's happening is I have an LFO on that just moving it so that it's never in the same place. And you kind of get some constant movement. So yeah, then from there we've got a bit of reverb, just to give it some space, you know, makes it ring out a bit more. Usually when you have a sound like this, it's just brown, like that, just like once every 2 bars. You want some kind of space effect on it to make it a bit fatter. And to just kind of make it like breathe through the mix like that. Then we just have a bit of drum bus, which is fattening this up and making it hit a bit more. And then finally, I have this high-pass filter just cutting out the low end, and that is it for the stab. And then from there, we have the effects which sound like this. So what's happening here is we have these 2 different things. We have this one, which is happening pretty much throughout the whole track here, just once every bar. This is just like this little effect sound. It's going through a bit of echo, a bit of reverb, a bit of a high pass filter, and then I also have this auto pan here, which is just kind of making it sound sidechain, because you can see it's on quarter notes. We've got the phase down to 0, so it's not affecting the stereo width of the sound, and then we just have this inverted and on the saw wave, so it's bouncing up. So that gives us kind of like a pulse, so it's fitting in with the groove a bit more. And then for the second effect, we just have this little vocal effect sound, which this is just like a little, and then that's just going through a bit of reverb and a bit of a high pass filter. And then that's it. You can see I don't have anything on the group. You don't really need a whole lot with this type of stuff, you know, pretty much just whatever they have individually. But you can see what these are doing is just kind of adding some like background effects to the track. Kind of creating some like groove. Like I'm almost considering this more part of the drums than I would consider it part of like the effects. Because you can hear like every single time it comes around having that like on the 2 every time. Again, again, it's creating a lot of groove in the track. So you definitely want to think about adding little stuff like this, and then this little one at the end. Just mixes it up so that we have something a little bit fresh there. And this also is a little bit kind of taking the place of the stab too, because I tried having the stab just be at the end of every like bar like that, but it's a little bit too much. So it kind of like, having this here takes that same place, but it's a different sound from the stab, so it fits really nicely there. And yeah, then from there we have this little percussion here, which sounds like this. So these are just some different percussion sounds. You can see we've got this one sort of more of like a sort of sound. That one's just going through some reverb and some drum bus and a high pass filter. And then we have these claps as well. So these are just kind of like the second half of that like background stuff. Like if we have, like I'll play you this track, if we use just the lead and like that main stab. See how it sounds a little bit flat? So this is why we need all this little like adding these claps and the effects and everything. And then the key is just making sure that none of it is overlapping. Like if you look at all these different sounds here that are adding this extra background stuff, none of these are like hitting at the same time. So nothing's clashing there. And yeah, and then on the claps you can see we just have a bit of echo, a bit of reverb, a bit of drum bus. Then from there we have the kick groove, which sounds like this. So the way this is made is we have our kick. You can see just like standard fat punchy techno kick. Got it going through a bit of saturation. And then we have these what's called ghost kicks here. So what this is it's actually a kick sample, and then I'll just turn off all these different effects here. So it's just a kick sample, we're taking it and we're kind of like, it's just straight 16th notes, but you can see we're playing with the velocities, so it's like and then what's happening here is we're turning this into a bass, because you can see I'm filtering it, like low passing it, and then it's going through this drum bus just to make it a bit fatter. Here's without that. And then with that you can see how much of a difference that makes. And then after that we just sidechain it to the kick. And then I have this EQ8 because you can see all that stuff around 100 Hertz that I cut out. Now it fits a bit better with the kick. But yeah, so this is a really great way to make a rumble. With this style, I find like the rumbles aren't usually just like a standard delay or reverb rumble. It tends to be something with a little bit more rhythm to it that's a little bit more like aggressive like this. Like you just get something very special when you make this with the ghost kicks, where you can control the velocities and really make it all kind of more rhythmic. So yeah, and then on the group of those, I just have a little bit of saturation and a little bit of compression. So here's with nothing. And then with the saturation. And then with the compression. So what this is the saturation, as you can hear, is gluing these together again without it. And then with it, you can hear it's just that thing that kind of fills in the space to really make the kick and the low end sound proper in the mix and hit right and kind of sound like one thing. And then the compressor is just sort of doing that a little bit more. It's just evening out the volume levels of the kick and the rumble. So here's without it. And then with it, you can hear they just kind of fit in a bit better, like I said. And yeah, the key to this one is just turning up the attack and then just doing like a very light amount. Like it's not that much compression. And then because the attack is turned up, it's not going to mess up the transients of any of the sounds. But yeah, that's it for the kick groove. And then the last thing we have here are these cymbals, which sound like this. So what we have here is we have our main hi-hat. We have this 909 hi-hat playing 16th notes. We have this ride, which you can see the ride I've high passed. I've put it through an echo as well, which I've got the echo, the left and the right ear at 2 separate times. So you're hearing these like being super spread out. And it kind of sets this in a different place in the mix from the rest of the cymbals, as you can hear, because it's more in the left and right ear. And everything else is down the center. And then you can see I've also got that going through a bit of saturation to beef it up. And then the last cymbal we have here is this hi-hat. So what this one's doing is, you can see it's kind of playing off of that main hi-hat. We have this one playing straight 16th notes. But then when we add this one on top, you can see it's just kind of accentuating certain notes. So certain notes are exaggerated there, and then when we play that with the other hi-hat, you can see it creates this really cool groove just by adding in another little hi-hat there. Another key to this one is the panning. So you can see I have this auto pan here. It's on quarter notes, and then we just have it moving this back and forth. So this is also helping to make this kind of stand out from that 909 hi-hat, because that one's straight down the center. This one's wide. So we're hearing like the groove be accentuated from ear to ear, essentially. And then on the group of these, we just have a bit of saturation and a bit of a high pass filter. So here's without that. And then with the saturation, you can hear how that's really punching. And then with the high pass, it's just cutting out the lows and making sure there's nothing getting in the way of the kick or any of the other low end in the track. And yeah, so pretty simple sort of cymbal processing here, you know. Pretty standard stuff we would do to make it just kind of fit into the track. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI presets. Everything from this video is available right at the top of the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.